target under the Bank of Jamaica Amendment Act 2020. Annual report on audited financial statements of the Independent Park Limited for the years 2016-2017 and 2017-2018. The Auditor General's Department Certified Appropriation Account, Head 72,000 and 72,000A and 72,000B, Ministry of Local Government and Community Development for the year 2018-2019.
Bills brought from the Senate.
The following is a message from the President of the Senate. To the Honorable House of Representatives, I have the honor to advise the Honorable House of Representatives that on the 23rd day of April 2021, a bill shortly entitled the Urban Renewal Tax Relief Amendment Act 2021 and a bill shortly entitled the Tobacco Industry Regulation, Validation and Indemnity Repeal Act 2021 were passed in the Senate without amendment. Signed, Thomas Tavares, Finson O.J., C.D., Q.C., J.P., President of the Senate.
Bills brought, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, Dr. Chan.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I beg to give note at the next meeting of the House. Madam Speaker, I beg to give note at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read a first time a bill. Mic is on. Okay. The mic, I must look. Madam Speaker, I beg to give note at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and I have read the first time a bill shortly entitled the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organization Amendment Act 2021.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motion. Whereas the cost of electricity continues to be too high for Jamaican consumers and businesses, and whereas there has been important reforms resulting in additional renewables being used to generate electricity, and whereas there has been substantial new generating capacity utilizing liquefied natural gas, and whereas there has been reductions in the cost of heavy fuel oil and diesel, and whereas, notwithstanding the above, the cost of electricity continues to increase, and whereas a major component of the cost of electricity is a high level of theft of such electricity, and whereas there are important developments in solar technology, making it more reliable and cost-effective, and whereas the Government of Jamaica collects revenues from various fuels that were earmarked for a hedge, and whereas the hedge has not been operational in many years, and whereas proceeds from the hedge can be used to provide solar electricity solutions for the 200,000 households that steal electricity, and whereas the termination of electricity theft will result in lower electricity costs to all ratepayers, be it resolved that this Parliament agrees that it has a responsibility to address a high level of theft of electricity, and be it further resolved that the issues herein and solutions proposed be referred to the Economy and Production Committee for its assessment and recommendations.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move, be it resolved, that the reports identified below be referred to the Public Accounts Committee of the House of Representatives for consideration and report. Audit report of the Auditor General's Department for the period April 2016 to March 2019. Ministry of Finance and the Public Service report on the appropriation accounts of the Auditor General's Department for the year 2013-2014. Ministry of Finance and the Public Service report on the appropriation accounts of the Auditor General's Department for the year 2016-2017. Ministry of Finance and the Public Service report
on the appropriation accounts of the Auditor General's Department for the year 2017-2018. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion.
Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sitting of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I hereby seek the leave of the House to introduce a private member's bill entitled the Constitution Amendment Impeachment Act 2021.
Is this the wish of the House? Aye. Leave granted. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained.
Madam Speaker, I now move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Limited Liabilities Companies Act 2021.
A bill shortly entitled the Limited Liability Companies Act 2021 read a first time.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take second reading of the bill and to take it through all its concluding stages.
Public business.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Which she gave earlier. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I ask that this motion be approved.
The question is that the motion be approved. Those in favor? Those against? The motion is now approved. House Leader, are we moving into the sectoral debate or are we?
So, Madam Speaker, we will now move into the sectoral debate. And our first speaker is the Honorable Karl Samuda, Minister of Labour and Social Security, and he'll be followed Thank you. Go ahead, Minister.
Just before, Minister, just before you start, it would be remiss of me, not on my own behalf, on your behalf, to wish today best wishes to the birthday lady and the birthday gentleman of the Parliament. I think the leader of opposition business shares a birthday with the acting leader of the House this afternoon. And I'm not quite finished. And the lady sitting directly behind the House leader, she had a birthday yesterday. So I think it is in order that we should thank God for their lives, the contributions they have made to this Parliament and to this country, and to wish them the very best for the future. Minister Samuda, over to you.
Thank you very much. Huh? I only have one. I did. It's not working. All right, let me, Madam Speaker, if
we'll allow you to speak from a seat that is not your own.
I'll speak from here if you don't mind. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the permission.
We have copies of your presentation, Mr. Minister.
Not necessary, no, Madam Speaker.
Not.
But they will get as it goes along, as usual. Thank you.
Members, his presentation is coming.
Yes.
Go ahead, Minister.
Thank you, Madam. Madam Speaker, I wish to join you in wishing for those members who are celebrating their birthday today, not the least of which, of course, is our beautiful and hard-working and efficient acting House Leader. Congratulations. But in addition to that, the assistant to the House Leader also celebrates her birthday today. She's in the gallery, Atoya. So I wish to extend that as well. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I stand here a very proud member of Parliament, someone who has devoted most of my life in the field of politics, who has represented the same political constituency from different sides of the House for over 40 years. Madam Speaker, that is due to the tremendous effort of persons far more worthy than I am to explain the importance of service to the people in their community. And I refer to those people in North Central St. Andrew who has been unrelenting in their support of myself and all the persons who work very closely with me. I wish to thank them sincerely. I have, Madam Speaker, the distinction of having one of my councillors being the longest serving councillor in the country, Councillor Lee Clark from the Whitehall Division. He came in with me at the same time. We fought together during the state of emergency in 1976, and he has been with me ever since. But then I don't lose friends. I make it a business of trying to strengthen friendships, not to create problems where we have to divide. So, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I wish to wholeheartedly thank them, both councillors, Ms. Suzanne Senior Councillor for the Norbrook Division, and Lee Clark, for their years of dedication, not just to me, but to the great party, the great Jamaica Labour Party. Thank you very much. And Madam Speaker, I once again take the greatest pleasure and emotional experience every time to thank the person responsible for who I am, my wife. I married her at the ripe age of 25 years. And we've been married for 47 years, and I've been fighting politics for 46 of those 47 years. So it is fair to say that anything I need to use as a refresher in terms of advice and commitment, she's right there, and it's my best source of information. I honor her every day and thank her for the effort she has made in my professional career and in raising a fantastic family. Madam Speaker, I wish to thank the Prime Minister for appointing me Minister of Labour and Social Security. I never saw that in the cards, but having been presented with it and having him request that I go there, I could not ever think of denying him. And therefore, I'm happy to advise this Honourable House that though there are challenges, the working relationship that has been forged between the leadership of the party that I represent and myself is one that can never, ever be broken. And in going to the Ministry of Labour, Madam Speaker, I am reminded that the first Minister of Labour was the gentleman who actually named the Jamaica Labour Party. I speak of none other than the revered Lyndon Newland. So I have some big shoes to fill. But I first want to pause just for a moment of recollection, and say how grateful Jamaica should be for the sterling performance and effort and sincerity of my predecessor, the late Shahini Roberts. I have seen evidence of her work, her commitment, her devotion to service, and absolute commitment to the small man and woman. Her involvement at the constituency level is legendary. And I commend to the Member of Parliament the examples of Shahini Robinson, who we fought a challenging campaign, and she prevailed. And I dare say, were it not that the Lord chose to take her at this time, she would be there for eternity. I want to thank all the members of the ministry led by the Permanent Secretary who is here today, Mrs. Rizden, who leads a very, very challenging and large ministry. I wish to thank them for their reception, receiving me wholeheartedly and working with me, tolerating my little idiosyncrasies that are by this time legendary. But we are working together, and we work in the interests of Jamaica, not in the interests of any particular person. So thank you very much. Madam Speaker, this is one of the most important ministries working quietly in the background to provide social welfare services and to maintain industrial harmony. We have responsibility for issues relating to workers and employers, national insurance scheme, pensioners, persons with disabilities, senior citizens, PATH, and public assistance beneficiaries. Jamaica has been hit hard by COVID-19, and there's no denying that. It's posed a major challenge for us. The Ministry of Labour and Social Security continues to be at the forefront of effort by the government to assist our most vulnerable who have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. Madam Speaker, as this is the House and this is the debate, I make mention of the fact that our recurrent expenditures, or estimates of expenditures for 2021-22 fiscal year is $13.7 billion. This is a 238.26% over the $4.035 billion revised estimates for 2021. At first glance, we may say that that is an extraordinary increase, but the fact is the operational and beneficiary payment cost on the path from the capital to the recurrent heads of expenditure and an additional $800 million for social assistance for the elderly accounts for that increase. So it is really not that the Minister of Finance allowed his generosity to get away with him and granted us that level of recurrent expenditure, or capital, but it is because the capital was transferred to the recurrent, hence that large size recurrent. Madam Speaker, for the first time in the 19-year history of the PATH program, it is 100% funded by the government of Jamaica. Take note of that, Mr. Leader of the Opposition. Yes, but make sure you don't forget it. We thank our multilateral partners, the IDB and the World Bank, who have helped us over these years. Madam Speaker, I want to turn for a moment to the public assistance and the grants that are offered by our ministry. We continue to address the needs of the most vulnerable groups in the society, including persons who have been affected by the man-made or natural disasters. Up to the middle of March of the fourth quarter of the financial year 2020-21, 2019 individuals benefited from grants totaling approximately $114 million. Through the short-term poverty intervention program, 3,915 individuals benefited from grants totaling approximately $69 million. In response to the ravages of COVID-19, the ministry implemented the Special Emergency Relief Intervention, distributing $89 million in grants to 4,971 poor families across the country. The Ministry of Labour and Social Security's disaster response activities in 2020 were predominantly in response to the pandemic. With the declaration of the first quarantine community in Bull Bay, it was the Ministry, in conjunction with the Humanitarian Assistance Committee partners, and commenced the distribution of relief supplies to families in quarantine on March 14, 2020. So it was the first responders, was really the ministry, other than the Ministry of Health, of course, Ministry of Social Security. Up to February 28, 2021, the team has distributed approximately 45,000 food packages, 8,516 hygiene packages, and other relief supplies and personal care items to families in quarantine and other families affected by the pandemic across the island. The humanitarian response is ongoing, and the team continues to provide island-wide food supplies to affected families across the country. Over the same period, the team responded to 242 incidents of fire affecting 396 families. 931 individuals were assisted with food, comfort items, emergency grants, funeral assistance, and counseling. Madam Speaker, not only have we had to face the pandemic, which is bad, but also the flood rains from October to November 2020 resulted in varying degrees of damage to 114 dwellings in over 60 communities island-wide. Our ministry gave support in the form of grants, meals, food packages, and numerous other relief supplies to over 120 persons affected by the flood rains. Madam Speaker, let me express appreciation to our partners, the Jamaica Red Cross, Adventist Relief Association, and Food for the Poor for their support. Additionally, later this month, we will be receiving a donation of food supplies from the World Food Programme. Many of you in this House have been asked to provide us with names of needy persons in your constituencies, and I sincerely hope that by this, all of those lists have been submitted. But, Madam Speaker, as someone who has, over these many years, been preoccupied with the notion that one day I would be in a position to be more proactive in assisting the most needy and vulnerable people in our country, I caused to be initiated a program that will cost us $100 million. The Minister of Finance immediately I got his attention, and he's anxious to find out where is this money coming from. Well, Minister, the money is coming from within our existing budget. We have done a realignment because we recognize that it is absolutely urgent. Time cannot be spent dilly-dallying about giving assistance to the poor and the needy. And so we have set aside $100 million to be provided for members to identify and be able to give support for the poor and vulnerable within their constituents. I must point out that on no account will a recommendation be accepted unless it is coming over the signature of a member of parliament. This is a program designed to enable members of parliament to have the flexibility to do the things that are necessary to bring relief to the suffering people within their constituency. I suspect that shortly you will be receiving letters outlining the procedural and accountability requirements that will ensure a fair and equitable distribution of these resources. This will be, as I said, MP-driven. As critical partners, we are expecting the fullest cooperation and oversight as these resources are internally sourced through a process of realignment, as I said earlier. And so we are relying on our partners within the political environment to safeguard these funds and to use them wisely. Madam Speaker, I am truly happy that we will implement the social pension program this year. I might pause to point out that this program is the first of its kind in Jamaica and is the largest social protection program to be implemented by the government since the introduction of PASS almost 20 years ago. And you know, Madam Speaker, we must bear in mind at all times that we are talking about these kinds of programs at a time when we are undergoing the greatest stress and threat to our economy through the pandemic that has caused us so much grief. It is absolutely remarkable that as a little country we are able to order our affairs in such a manner that we can bring this kind of relief at this time. And I think the Minister of Finance must be commended for his efforts in this regard. This program will bring us closer to generating a minimum level of social protection for our people. It is no question that the existing facilities that are given as support to our most needy is inadequate. And I know that the Minister of Finance shares my view on it and the views of so many others, that had we not had this pandemic in the severity with which we have been hit, we will be well along our way of being able to give the persons who are old and disabled greater assistance and to give greater opportunities for our children to enjoy a healthy and productive childhood and developmental strategy for them. The truth is, while we have made significant strides in the provision for our elderly, there are gaps in the system. Based on the selection mechanisms for the PATH program, the selection rate for the elderly who may be living alone or are asset-rich but income poor, and by that I should indicate that it is possible and it exists throughout the country, where a poor family who lives in a house that they own and have owned for years can't find enough money to buy groceries. They are poor in terms of cash. And so they are in a predicament because if they, first of all, they can't borrow on the house because they have no basis on which to repay. And if they sell the house, they are going to be either having to live with relatives or be thrown out to live with strangers, neither of which are acceptable. So it is left to the government to give these people support in repayment for the efforts they made when they were in their youthful years. Without a steady stream of income, older persons are more vulnerable and some are left with little or no support from their families or communities. Without savings, investments, or family support, many of our elderly do not have a steady stream of income to assist in covering their daily living expenses. This is an unhealthy situation, and this has existed for years, arguably for generations. And I'm very grateful to be part of this administration, and I am confident from the discussions we have had and the strategies that are evolving that we are going to do something about it and relieve this suffering. The introduction of a social pension will enable us to reduce income inequality and promote a better quality of life for the older population. Madam Speaker, I am thankful to the Ministry of Finance headed by our Minister, that member from Northwestern St. Andrew, my neighbor. I hope you remember that more often, though. Very thankful for allocating $800 million for the social pension program this year. The first phase of the program, which begins on July the 15th, targets seniors over 75 years who are not in receipt of a pension, disability benefit, or other retirement benefit or income. These persons receiving cash grants from PATH, Poor Relief, when they reach the age of 75, will be transitioned to the new program. Beneficiaries of this program must also not be residing in a government institution run by the Minister of Local Government and Rural Development. But there must not, as a provision of this grant, they must not be resident in a government-financed institution. And for that, they will receive $3,400 per month. Madam Speaker, this afternoon I tabled a ministry paper on the social pension program in this House. It will provide members with detailed information on the program and how persons may benefit. In an effort to ensure the greatest effort is made to identify these persons, we are expecting to initiate an outreach program whereby approximately, now Minister of Finance, we will have to have another little discussion, but it's one that we will resolve. But we have already earmarked a provision whereby we will engage a little army, because the existing size of our social workers, the team, is too small. Yes. So we are going to engage 300 youngsters across the country, which will be able to identify these persons in need. They will assist our island's social workers, and they will work very closely with the constituencies, and they will be chosen, and this must be understood here, they will be chosen by the members of Parliament, because what our strategy going forward is that we are engaging the members of Parliament as partners in our effort to challenge the poverty that the poor has to experience. So in that sense, we are hoping to forge that kind of relationship. So I ask that every one of you engage youngsters who can be part of that team, because how it is now, by the time we get around to identifying all the people who are in genuine need and create that database, we'll be out of time. This social pension is just another signal that this government will not let anyone fall through the cracks. Simply put, Mr. Speaker, this is a caring government conscious of the challenges of the people of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, despite the huge setback resulting from COVID-19, the ministry has had some notable accomplishments. There was a 40% increase in PATH, cash grants to beneficiaries, as we expended approximately $9.24 billion. This increase was due to additional benefits paid in May 2020 under the We Care program. In keeping with our commitment to protect and provide nutritional support for the children in receipt of PATH, additional benefits were also provided to families in April, June, October, and December 2020. For this month of April 2021, PATH families with school-age children will again receive additional benefits. Madam Speaker, PATH is determined to ensure that our children succeed. It is not what is required, but if used properly, will go a far way in assisting the development of our children. During the 2020-21 fiscal year, 4,223 students received tertiary bursaries to pursue undergraduate programs totaling $423.3 million. And another 1,598 students received grants to pursue certificate, diploma, and CXC courses totaling $39.4 million. Most people, many people, don't recognize the contribution that is made by the Ministry of Labor and Social Security in respect of education and assistance with education. We require, Mr. Speaker, acquired and retrofitted 3 mobile intervention service units. In fact, is he here? The former Minister of Labor was very integral in supporting the mobile intervention service units that will now take our services directly to the affected children and clients in rural areas particularly. That's right. Unfortunately, the spike in COVID-19 has caused this program to fall behind somewhat. We are also in the process of discussing with the Ministry of Health the possibility of using these units to assist with the Ministry of Health's vaccination program. Minister, did you hear that? Oh, okay. Don't you think that would be helpful? That is the appropriate response. The National Council for Senior Citizens expanded the Meals on Wheels feeding program from the corporate area to rural poor and elderly in order to give greater food security. 3,132 more older persons across the island were assisted with food packages under this program. A total of 3,632 persons benefited under the program. Madam Speaker, it was a great pleasure for me to participate at the official opening of the new parish office in St. Anne that was opened by the Prime Minister. That office was opened some time ago, shortly after I became the Minister of Labor, sometime in November last year. I am happy today to rededicate the building to the loving memory of former MP and Minister of Local Government, the Honourable Shahini Roberts, a lifelong fighter for the poor and needy. Madam Speaker, the financial year 2020-21 for the National Insurance Scheme was a year of adjustment and one of mixed results. COVID-19 required this ministry to play its part in lending to protect the persons with pensions. Since April 2020, arrangements were made each month with the post offices to allow pensioners to cash their entire pension vouchers for 1 month all at once instead of fortnightly. And I think this would be a great help to the pensioners who oftentimes finds it challenging to be up and down to collect the small amount that they receive each fortnight. So getting it all at once would be much more beneficial to them. Activities are underway to change the frequency of payments for the pensioners so that, as I said, we will get it done once a month. Madam Speaker, a priority area for the financial year 21-22 will be the actuarial review of the NIS. This will shed light on the financial performance since the last review in 2016 and bring into focus 3 things: the funding status since the last review, the impact of the minor adjustments in the contribution rates, and whether or not any other adjustments are required to ensure that the scheme remains in a position to honor all of its long-term obligations. From 2007 to 2019, the sum expended to pay benefits exceeded the contributions received by approximately $2 billion. This means that the shortfall had to be supported by investment earnings. With the implementation of the reform measures that began in 2019 for the first time since 2007, the contributions paid into the scheme exceeded the sum expended on the payments to benefits. Reform measures recommended by the actuary and approved by this administration occasioned a turnaround in the financial performance of the scheme. The first of various reform measures was implemented on April 1, 2019, with the increase in the NIS contribution rate from 5% to 5.5%. And you recall I brought that matter to the House a short time ago, will now be at 6% on April 1, 2020. This has resulted in positive net contributions of $476.2 million as at February 28, 2021, moving from a deficit of negative $245 million as at February 28, 2020. So we are moving in the right direction as far as that is concerned. In terms of the National Insurance Fund, the National Insurance Fund continues to be a viable, sustainable institution within the Ministry of Labour and Social Security. As at February 28, 2021, the fund was valued at approximately $123.98, call it $124 billion, which represents an increase of 2.2% in net asset value for the corresponding period last year. Again, it is moving in the right direction despite the setbacks of COVID and some of its investments. Total investment income, including unrealized gains, as at February 28, 2021, was $11.05 billion and represents a 23% decline in total investment income for the corresponding period 2020. This decline was largely due to the impact of unrealized losses on equities which occurred against the backdrop of a decrease in the JSE main market index brought about by the pandemic. So it gives you an idea of the impact that the pandemic has at all levels of our economy. This situation is improving, and we are already seeing recovery in the equities and other markets. As at February 28, 2021, the fund recorded a net increase in assets returning from 2020 to 2021 of $10.5 billion. Despite the challenges brought about by the COVID pandemic, which affected the speed and delivery of several plans and projects, the fund is still actively carrying out development work for selected NIS offices across the island with a bid to ensure improvement in service and the whole environment of providing for employees and pensioners. So we are upgrading our facilities so that the pensioners can enjoy a better atmosphere within which to visit and to see exactly how best to improve the situation for themselves. For the upcoming year, the National Insurance Fund intends to focus on several high-priority areas, including investments across the real estate market, fixed income and equity sectors, and the increase in the insurable wage ceiling for the NIS. Madam Speaker, how much time do I have left? No. Madam Speaker, I'd like to take a moment to address the matter that has been covered in the press relating to the 2017 audit of the fund. Yes. It is a fact that there have been governance issues at the fund. That's undeniable. There has been some confusion in relation to the treatment of the NIF. I am determined to correct this, and I must credit Minister Clark for establishing the NIF Review Commission in 2019. That commission has made recommendations which are now being reviewed by the Ministry of Labour and the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service and will be put before the Cabinet shortly. That's right. One key recommendation is that commission is for the NIF to become its own body corporate. Yes. However, the NIF cannot be divorced from the NIS. Its enactment insists that we adhere to that relationship. The two are umbilically connected. But we rely heavily and have to rely heavily on the Ministry of Finance because it is the Ministry of Finance that guarantees the money that we spend. If we lose money, it is the Ministry of Finance through the consolidated fund who will have to pay for it. And we cannot afford that. And we're not going to let you down, Minister of Finance. We're going to work together to ensure that the fund remains viable, strong, and in a growth path. We have just appointed a new board, highly professional and capable board for the next 3 years. The members of the board were carefully selected and based on their skill sets I am confident that they will serve the fund very well. Make no mistake about it, we will take all measures necessary to ensure the protection of the people's NIS. As Minister of Labour, I give this solemn undertaking to this Honourable House here today to protect the pensioners that are in the group of people in our society. Previously, the board of the various companies under the NIF were all self-appointed by the advisory board, as it is still called, and referred to as the advisory board. Madam Speaker, we will be working assiduously with the Ministry of Finance to correct that situation, and so that we can have a board with our own corporate body that runs the affairs of the NIF. This I am determined to correct once and for all. I can give credit to Minister Robinson for changing this in one of her last acts in the Cabinet. She ensured that the board overseeing the investment at Malaya Braco was appointed by the Cabinet, and all other appointments will be made in like manner. As we continue to strengthen the structure of the NIF, an internal auditor and a risk manager have been engaged by the fund. Madam Speaker, I know that with the last increase in pensions in 2018, pensioners are now expecting an increase in their payments, and reasonably so. I await the results of the actuarial review to guide any increase in benefits. The truth is, Madam Speaker, if we are not careful and if we do not run the fund in a most highly proficient and professional manner, it is expected, based on the actuarial report, that the fund will be depleted by 2037. Well, nobody here in this Honourable House or anywhere in Jamaica would wish to see that happen. So if I don't do my job properly, many of you in this House and across Jamaica will have no pension to get. So we have to get to work, and quickly. Madam Speaker, managing a $120-odd billion fund is no small task, and we regard it as a major undertaking to do all we can to ensure the survival of the fund. We have a number of legislative matters that will be brought to this Honourable House. I will only mention them, but the Minister of State have been assigned the responsibility to take ownership of these measures and to bring them and debate them in the House. We continue to work to enhance the legislative program.
The Minister's time for speaking has expired. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the Minister be allowed sufficient time to complete his presentation.
The question is that the Minister be allowed sufficient time to complete his presentation. Those in favour? Those against, the ayes have it. Minister Samuda.
I thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the members of the House. Madam Speaker, I turn to the overseas employment, which is a vexed issue for many. And since becoming Minister, I have looked into this, the construct of this provision, and I cannot honestly say that I find that it meets with my favor in totality. We have a situation here, Madam Speaker, where we have a declining labor source in the United States. We are required to send less people this year than we did last year, whilst in Canada they are holding their own. But the construct of the provision of the program is such that only 10% of the requirements, like in Canada, 4,000 odd, only 10% comprises new participants. In other words, simply put, existing workers under the program are the ones that are most desirable by the farmers. And there's really little that we can do to change that, because they have become accustomed to working on the farms. The farmers have accepted them, all in some cases almost like a member of the family. And every year they request their team of workers. So we only have 10% that is new. So when I looked at the amount of farm work cards, as it is called, that were distributed, I said that something is missing here. Something not right in the House of Denmark. So when we examined it more carefully, got more granular, we came up against another peculiar situation where we were distributing 4,000 cards, and we were receiving persons from those cards that were recommended. Only a small portion of them, a minute portion of them, were invited to travel. A minute portion. So the whole thing not fitting. And what happens is that, like in my case, in my specific case, in North Central St. Andrew, I would be given several cards, and we would go about the business of requesting people and interviewing people and recommending people. And at the end of the day, only 3 travel. Out of 4,000 odd. Only a fraction travel. That situation does not make any sense. For instance, in Canada, 2020, and these are actual figures given to me, a total of 8,071 workers were employed. And of that, only 794 are new. So at the rate we are going, it's not a source of, there's no renewal of the pool. There's no renewal of the pool. Now, I must tell you another thing. Last year, in 2019, and this is an interesting figure that the House might take keen note of, 4,643 cards to members of parliament, etc., were distributed. And of that total, they only took up 794. So I asked myself the question, why this drama about distributing cards? Where you are distributing nearly 5,000 cards and only 700 are being invited to travel? Something is not right with the program. Not right. And I don't intend to continue with this program whereby I give, as you rightly say, false hope to people that they're going to get a trip to America to go and work and make a livelihood for themselves. I will tell you, I'll give you even a more dramatic set of figures. The Prime Minister, who I like to use as a kind of benchmark, the Prime Minister only received 13 people who traveled from a recommendation list of over 100. 13. My colleague from West Kingston, who has people to spare, only got 5.
What about North East St. Andrew, where we have many farmers?
St. Andrew Southern got 8. Here it is. You would think that the system would have mercy on the Minister of Finance. I got 3, and the Minister of Finance got 4. I'm going to give, Madam Speaker, hold on, settle down. Madam Speaker, I'm going to give you something that you say rural, you would have to include in rural the former minister. The former minister. The former minister. This is the person who is running the program. The former minister who is responsible for the program got a grand total of 8. My apologies, 7. Out of hundreds that were allotted. So there's a major disconnect here, Minister. A major disconnect. This program has to be looked at far more carefully. So here is what we're going to do. Here. Hold on. You'll be interested. Here's what we're going to do. Hold on. St. Anne Southeast got 11. Here's what we're going to do. Right. Hold on. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to, at the moment, wait, gentlemen, ladies, please. At the moment, there's a thing called a pool. A pool from which persons are selected. The pool is now empty because what I've done is all farm work cards that were given out in September have been withheld, and they will be redistributed to the sitting members of Parliament for the constituency that they were originally given to. No, they're going to be given to those members, and they will choose from among those lists who they would like now to form a new pool. That's the first phase. And we want a pool of 3 we want a pool of 3 to 3,500 persons recommended by the members of Parliament. You will remember I gave you an undertaking here in the Finance Committee that in the future all persons selected to travel would come from a pool chosen by the members of Parliament, and others, but minimally so, primarily from the members of Parliament. And that is the basis on which we're going to go forward. So we're going to clean up what I probably is not a good word to use, but we're going to restructure it so that we will know what is in the pool, because every member of Parliament will have a set of people in that pool. And we will then carefully devise a system that gives equity. And that's the basis on which we're going to go forward. But as it is now, it is not operating in a manner that can enjoy the type of scrutiny that it really needs to enjoy. I'm very happy that I've had the chance to look at this and to review it very, very carefully. Madam Speaker, we will be distributing a copy of the ministry's presentation, which is far more fulsome than I have delivered. And I want to advise that the Minister of State will deal with a number of the items that I have not dealt with, because he has been given the assignment to manage those items in Parliament. And this minister is a Minister of State, is a partner. He is a partner. And as I have said, when you go to him about a matter under his charge, you might as well be speaking to me. You might be better off speaking to him than me. He is in charge. So I'm not assigning him something to keep him busy. I'm assigning him something that is consistent with his training, his experience, and his worth to this Parliament and the country. So he will take a number of the items, Minister, that we have not been able to cover because of time. And I would like to invite now everyone to have a look at the brochure that the publication that we are sending. You got a copy? Right. Examine it carefully, look at it, turn it upside down, Mr. Leader of the Opposition, and come prepared to argue your case before the people in Parliament. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, just before Member of Parliament Anthony Hylton makes his presentation, I ask that the item announcement be recommitted to enable the clerk to table a ministry paper brought by the Minister of Labour and Social Security.
Members, the question is that the item announcements on the agenda be committed. Recommitted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Also laid on the table of the House today is a copy of Ministry Paper number 27 of 2021 entitled the Social Pension Program.
Leader of Opposition Business, now invite you to make your presentation.
Madam Speaker, I join my colleague before me in commending you on the firm but fair manner in which you have conducted the business of the House. As you know all too well, Madam Speaker, it can be quite anarchic at times, but you have stayed the course and earned our respect. On this occasion, Madam Speaker, I give recognition to the omnipotent one for protecting and guiding my footsteps through yet another year and another birthday. To my wife Judith and daughter Nile for their support and understanding of the several family gatherings missed as I carry out my duties to my constituency and country, oftentimes at their expense. To my constituents of Western St. Andrew and the leadership of the constituency, especially Councillors Clark, Perry, and Anderson, the work continues to address the physical and social infrastructure challenges posed to an urban constituency such as Western St. Andrew. In this, my 4th term representing St. Andrew Western, 6th term overall in this House, I recommit to redoubling my effort to make progress in the areas we have identified together for improvement, such as roads, housing, drainage, education and skills training, and of course, job creation. A special recognition to the opposition and party leader, Mark Golding, for his confidence in asking me to give content to a portfolio which reflects his vision for a more competitive Jamaican economy at this time when growth in the economy is of paramount importance. I also recognize and salute the members of my task force whose guidance and advice in policy development has enriched this presentation as they do other matters of national development. To the staff in this Honourable House for being supportive always, and to my staff at the constituency office, including my driver, close protection officer, as well as the many volunteers assisting with the routine but important tasks of helping constituents in navigating the bureaucracy to get assistance of one form or another, especially at this time. I'm indebted, Madam Speaker, to these and several others, too many to mention here today. Madam Speaker, the opposition agrees with the government that we must build back better, or Jamaica, after the ravages of the COVID-19 pandemic. For us, on the opposition benches, building back better inherently means building something new, something more resilient and agile, something more sustainable and better than what we had before. However, Madam Speaker, I must express concern at the outset that the government's policy focus and programs seem to be simply on getting back to where we were pre-COVID-19. Madam Speaker, in my last contribution to these sectoral debates, I called for a reset, restructure, and rebuilding of the Jamaican economy. It is in that same vein, Madam Speaker, that I again put forward for this year's contribution the theme, building ladders of opportunities and paving pathways to success. Madam Speaker, why am I talking about building ladders and paving pathways? Simply, I am putting forward a basic framework to help us build back better. Without ladders and pathways for our people,
Members,
Madam Speaker,
there's a very heavy murmur, and the leader of the opposition is speaking. Can we?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Without ladders and pathways for our people, Madam Speaker, I fear that we will forever be a nation of potential unfulfilled, of promises unrealized, and of dreams deferred. And building back better is not possible without our people, all the people. However, Madam Speaker, I do not believe all is lost. So today I call on the government and the entire Jamaican society to let us together seize the moment and build ladders of opportunity and pave pathways for the success of our people. The ladders I speak of are the tools to be used, such as physical planning, policy planning, reform of outdated laws, and the need for progressive legislation, among others. And the pathways are the strategies, the action plans to be implemented, and the roads traveled or the pathways taken. Madam Speaker, the tool in this instance, while not visible, is nevertheless real and is the multifaceted global logistics industry. Logistics and supply chain, Madam Speaker, is a powerful tool that, if properly used, can help us to build back better. The pathways are Jamaica's transformational journey to a logistics-centered economy. Madam Speaker, for the logistics-centered economy to be effective as a policy strategy to transform the Jamaican economy, we need policy prescriptions and action plans squarely aimed at benefiting businesses, especially the MSMEs, and the mass of the population who have been adversely impacted by the pandemic. It will always be for us on the opposition benches, Madam Speaker, about the people. We must unleash the potential of our people by providing rungs of opportunities, while removing stumbling blocks in their efforts to achieve success. In my presentation, Madam Speaker, I will focus attention on the opportunities in the global and domestic e-commerce sector of the last mile logistics, provide evidence of the emergence of a consensus around the logistics-centered economy, and remind us of the potential price if not taking advantage of this crisis. Madam Speaker, I will also argue for the diversification of our tourism-dependent economy, suggest some policy prescriptions for building ladders of opportunity and removing barriers to success. I will, pointing to the virtues of developing the human capital, while promoting investments and improving our logistics performance as a means of achieving national and firm-level competitiveness. I will end, Madam Speaker, by urging the government to address the extreme vulnerability facing the MSME sector, while supporting the call by the opposition leader that a logistics council is needed to give critical support to the logistics industry. Madam Speaker, we must treat the COVID-19 pandemic as an opportunity to identify and address those underlying structural barriers that have limited or constrained our ability to have greater participation in the global economy, except as consumers of foreign goods and services. Imagine for a second, Madam Speaker, the pan chicken man plying his trade at Big Road or at the curry shop on Penwood Road, who may have an exceptionally delicious recipe or secret sauce that could become a niche e-commerce export product or licensed as a service and royalties collected. But he lacks a ladder or pathway to carry him forward to expand and diversify his income stream. Imagine the social and economic impact of a few dozen, or better yet, a few hundred of our entrepreneurs tapping into what the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, or UNCTAD, 2018 figures refers to as the global e-commerce sales market of US $25.6 trillion. It is not impossible, Madam Speaker. However, it will only be possible with ladders of opportunity and pathways to success. Sadly, Madam Speaker, Jamaica's ranking in the latest UNCTAD business to consumer, or B2C, e-commerce index 2020, which measures 152 nations on their readiness for online shopping, is 74th out of 152. Jamaica ranks 7th in Latin America and the Caribbean, but second in the Caribbean behind the Dominican Republic, which is ranked 67 out of 152, just ahead of Trinidad and Tobago. Unless we address the barriers and constraints identified in the index through directed policies, meaningful participation in global e-commerce will remain but an illusion and out of reach for most. Madam Speaker, surprisingly, the most binding constraint identified for the Caribbean, including Jamaica, is the unreliability of our postal services. This speaks to both the need for greater logistical connectivity with the necessary upgrades to both physical and digital infrastructure of the postal services itself, and the physical and digital infrastructure that they rely on to do their job efficiently and effectively. If we are to build back better and not just build back, and tap into the full potential of the global e-commerce market, the government must direct its attention to improving the postal service delivery system, especially aimed at supporting our MSMEs. Madam Speaker, Brazil's Exporter Facil, or Easy Export Program, which uses Brazil's postal network to give MSMEs across the country access to international markets, is an interesting model to emulate. The program has been a success, with Brazil recording export values through the program, increasing from US $12 million in 2000 to $272 million in 2012, with over 80% of businesses benefiting from being first-time exporters. Exporter Facil, Madam Speaker, functions as a joined-up government partnership of stakeholders such as the Postal Service, Customs, Courier Services, etc., with differing but complementary roles in unlocking the local barriers constraining MSME exports. This has had the effect, Madam Speaker, of increasing Brazil's total export value and volumes, diversifying its export markets, and leading to greater development and commercialization of new products. Why not Jamaica? Such a policy action would allow our entrepreneurs, especially our micro-solopreneurs, Madam Speaker, to climb the e-commerce ladder of opportunity and empower them to walk the pathways to greater success, especially in the parcel delivery logistics sector. I therefore implore the government, Madam Speaker, to reach out to our Brazilian friends and seek some technical assistance for the design and implementation of a Jamaican version of the Exporter Facil program. Additionally, Madam Speaker, as I did in my last contribution, I implore the government to seek out the technical assistance of UNCTAD to do an e-trade readiness assessment in order for Jamaica to have a full assessment in identifying specific gaps in our e-commerce. This will enable the rapid development of a data-driven policy response to support our many entrepreneurs entering this market segment at this time. The E-Commerce National Delivery Solution, or ENDS pilot project, designed in partnership between the government and the private sector, is a less ambitious version of the Brazilian program. But, Madam Speaker, if ENDS is to be a sustainable program, a number of issues must be resolved, ranging from the need to ensure common standards in delivery services, to ensuring light touch regulation of safety and security standards. Madam Speaker, a robust e-commerce ecosystem is vital for growth, especially for MSMEs. And as such, the opposition has long identified it as one of the driving forces in social and economic inclusion and empowerment for the mass of the Jamaican businesses and people. This, Madam Speaker, is the logistics-centered economy at work, in what is referred to as the last mile of both the domestic and global supply chains. Further, Madam Speaker, I'm calling on the government to state its position on the WTO moratorium on electronic transmissions, and the unilateral move by some 29 countries who have implemented or are seriously contemplating the introduction of a digital services tax. Madam Speaker, the moratorium on imposing duties, tariffs, taxes, and other charges on internet transmissions occurred during the early days of the WTO-sponsored negotiations between 1995 and 2000. The concern then, Madam Speaker, was that developing countries would impose taxes and tariffs on the fledgling tech industry, stifling its growth and development. Since then, however, much tension has developed between the United States and the European Union countries concerning measures, threats by the EU countries to impose taxes on primarily US companies. These include companies such as Facebook, Google, Apple, and Amazon. The US, in turn, has threatened retaliation through trade measures should they proceed. The matter, Madam Speaker, of a digital services tax must be taken seriously by the government. It is part and parcel of the discussions, Madam Speaker, between the OECD's Base Erosion and Profit Shifting, or BEPS, initiative. This is aimed at closing gaps in international taxation for companies that allegedly avoid taxation or reduce tax burden in their home country by engaging in moving operations or migrating their intangibles, mainly royalty payments from intellectual property, to lower tax jurisdictions. Madam Speaker, compounding this, but also connected to the BEPS initiative, is the recent EU black or grey listing of Jamaica for harmful tax practices, due in part to the structure of our special economic zone's fiscal incentives regime. Important as the SEZs are, Madam Speaker, to our future and our ability to build back better, this is a much larger issue than simply a SEZ problem. The implications of the moratorium, the digital services taxes, and the wider BEPS and the EU tax matters are far-reaching, impacting our very ability to recover in a post-COVID environment, and touching on our ability to attract and retain investments, particularly in the e-commerce and the global services or BPO sector. Madam Speaker, it is an understatement, therefore, to say that the implication of these issues are far and wide-reaching. They are potentially game-changing. Madam Speaker, we need to hear from the government, and if it doesn't have a policy, one needs to be formulated quickly. Madam Speaker, given the parlous state of our revenue, the government should be interested in this escalating debate. While the discussions at the WTO are ongoing, the OECD meets this summer, and now that the USA has articulated its support for a global minimum corporate tax, discussions are accelerated at breakneck speed. Madam Speaker, the people have a right to know what the government position is, as it will directly impact their future. And businesses need to know, as it could impact their current and future investments. So, Madam Speaker, I'm not saying these things to be alarmist, but I am sounding a trumpet, as a responsible opposition should do, given the seriousness of the matter and the silence of the government. Madam Speaker, the events of the last year have caused the entire world to pay attention to global supply chains and logistics operations. This is so as countries struggle to ensure the availability of critical goods and services due to the imposition of measures deployed in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic and livelihoods. The pandemic has produced a crisis of truly epic proportions, challenging governments and the populations they represent to rise to the historic occasion and build back better. Madam Speaker, it is that deeper understanding and appreciation for the strategic role of supply chains and logistics by the Leader of the Opposition, which has resulted in the naming of the portfolio for which I speak. However, Madam Speaker, the arrival of the pandemic has brought forcefully to the attention of significant sections of the global population the central role which supply chains and logistics occupy in our daily lives and in the continuation and profitability of businesses. Madam Speaker, as mentioned earlier, it is not accidental that the Leader of Opposition has framed a historic portfolio to address the imperceptible but real prospects presented by global supply chain management and logistics. This is an industry, Madam Speaker, whose importance in the delivery of goods, raw materials, and services are essential. I've often been accused of being a one-trick pony. All I can ever talk about is logistics, logistics, logistics. Other than the fact that this is a caricature, Madam Speaker, logistics is a pony that can do many tricks. Madam Speaker, my advocacy on this matter is clear, but more voices are happily joining the choir. A recent convert had this to say, Madam Speaker, and I quote, "Our plans to position Jamaica as a viable transportation center, a subset of the logistics hub, will remain despite the obvious economic shocks of the COVID-19 pandemic. This has the potential to draw more shipping and allied services and to be a driver of economic advancement," Mr. Montague stated. This time, Madam Speaker, I can truly say, as one of our world-famous artists say, it wasn't me. This time it was the IDB. Because, Madam Speaker, the Inter-American Development Bank, or IDB, is in a recent study titled Opportunities for Stronger and Sustainable Post-Pandemic Growth, indicated that to grow more rapidly, the Latin American Caribbean region, or LAC region, should enact a series of reforms to, among other things, help to connect businesses to global value chains. The study stated the obvious, that the LAC region has, and I quote, low participation in global value chains, both in their percentage and share, and in the stages in which they are involved, which is mainly concentrated in exporting raw materials or derivatives, end quote. However, Madam Speaker, the IDB study was hopeful in its conclusion that deeper and wider participation in global value chains is critical to economic recovery that generates high-quality jobs in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. It estimates that by strengthening its regional value chains, the LAC, the Latin American Caribbean region, in which Jamaica sits, could increase its exports to the United States alone by US $70 billion in sectors such as textiles, medical products, and automotive. This, Madam Speaker, gives us an idea of what we stand to gain by transforming Jamaica into a logistics-centered economy. We stand to gain a diversified economy in terms of industries, production, and exports, much-needed jobs, economic growth, and most importantly, a future for our people, Madam Speaker. However, the IDB sounds a very cautionary note in recognizing a truism that, and I quote, windows of opportunity open during crises, but may close rapidly. Countries that fail to take advantage of them may miss out on lasting benefits, end quote. So, Madam Speaker, companies are restructuring their global supply and value chains by changing their production and sourcing strategies and introducing greater resilience and agility. Much like many of the Japanese manufacturers did after the Fukushima disaster in 2011, COVID-19 has forced many global companies to pursue multi-site production and multi-source procurement strategies. Madam Speaker, thanks to the pandemic, Jamaica is at an inflection point, a crossroads in our history, where we continue doing what we have always done, and continue getting what we have always been getting, no or anemic growth. Or, Madam Speaker, we can choose to step up to the wicket and bat like our very survival depended on it, because it does. Madam Speaker, McKinsey & Company estimates that up to 1/4 of global goods exports worth $2.9 trillion to $4.6 trillion annually could feasibly shift to different countries in the next 5 years or so, though the potential varies considerably across industries. Madam Speaker, let us take a look at just 5 industries which could undergo a combination of reversion to domestic production, nearshoring, or new rounds of offshoring to new locations. The first is pharmaceuticals, which is estimated to have between 38 to 60%, or US $236 to $377 billion in export value in play for relocation. The second is automotive, which is estimated to have 15 to 20%, or US $261 to $349 billion in play. The third is medical devices, which is estimated to have between 37 to 45%, or US $100 or $120 billion in play. The fourth is semiconductors, which is estimated to have between 9 to 19%, or $92 to $184 billion in play. And the fifth is agriculture, which is estimated to have between 20 and 26% in play, or US dollars $112 to $149 billion. Madam Speaker, what if Jamaica captured just a small percentage of these, let's say 0.01%? What would that mean for the Jamaican economy and people? In the interest of time, Madam Speaker, let's just take a closer look at one, medical devices, given the fact that we are in the midst of the pandemic. 0.1% of the estimated US $100 to $120 billion export market in play for medical devices would translate, Madam Speaker, to a low of between US $10 million and a high of US $120 million annually. Madam Speaker, with this achievable target of just 0.1% of the estimated 100 to 120 billion US dollars, or 37 to 45% of the global export market, not the full global market of the approximately 425.5 billion US dollar in medical devices. Medical devices, Madam Speaker, would be among Jamaica's top 10 goods exports, with just 0.1%. But why not Jamaica? Regionally, Mexico, Costa Rica, and the Dominican Republic accounted for 95.5% of the region's medical devices exports between 2014 and 2018.
The member's time for speaking has expired.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the member be allowed
To finish.
sufficient time to finish his presentation.
The question before the House is that the member be given sufficient time to complete his presentation. Those in favour? Those against? Member?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm grateful to those who are kind enough to support it. Madam Speaker, I was making the point that regionally, Costa Rica, Mexico, and the Dominican Republic accounted for 95.5% of the region's medical devices exports between 2014 and 2018. According to the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, or ECLAC, the Dominican Republic, a small island developing state just like us, between 2014 and 2018, average exports of $1 billion of medical devices. Again, I ask, why not Jamaica? Currently, Madam Speaker, the manufacturing sector constitutes approximately 8.7% of the Jamaican economy. If we are to achieve the GDP growth target of moving from 66 billion in 2018 to 81 billion by December 2025, we need to focus attention on the implementation plan outlined in the strategy document developed and supported by the Manufacturers and Exporters Association. Madam Speaker, I did not select these industries at random. Rather, they were carefully selected, considering how we could build local medical resilience, food security, and industrial competitiveness by attracting the right investments. However, Madam Speaker, they were selected because they were also identified in the Jamaica Logistics Hub Initiative, Market Analysis, and Master Plan. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, Madam Speaker, the opposition, while in government, led the initiative to position Jamaica as a global logistic hub, a production and distribution center of goods and services for the 800 million plus population comprising the Americas market and beyond. The initiative was beyond talk, Madam Speaker, as we commissioned a study financed by the World Bank and carried out by international consultants, Nathan and Associates. Madam Speaker, the study remains a monumental work, demonstrating the opportunities and challenges presented by our geostrategic location in the middle of the Americas and our proximity in the expanded Panama Canal. It also confirms the opportunity for Jamaica to play a leading role in global trade, for making the global supply chain and logistics operations more resilient and agile in a post-pandemic world. Madam Speaker, the value of the study in the aftermath of the pandemic in setting out the framework for action by government and the private sector for transforming Jamaica into the logistics gateway of the Americas is inestimable. The existence of the study, Madam Speaker, has placed Jamaica in an advantageous position and ahead of the game, but only if we take the actions recommended by the study. It stipulates that we can attract some US $28 billion of investment over a 15 to 20-year period and create some 85,000 direct jobs at high levels of skills and remuneration. Many of these jobs, Madam Speaker, do not now exist in the areas of data sciences and analytics and Industry 4.0, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the Internet of Things. But again, Madam Speaker, the question is, will we respond? Madam Speaker, to say that Jamaica is a tourism-dependent state in the most tourism-dependent region in the world is to state the obvious. According to the IDB, 14 of the 15 most tourism-dependent nations in the Americas are in the Caribbean. Jamaica ranks 17th most dependent out of 166 countries. And the figures bear witness, Madam Speaker, with 54% of our exports coming from tourism, 33.9% of our GDP, employing over 120,000 people directly and another 250,000 indirectly. And, Madam Speaker, as mentioned by the Minister of Tourism, pre-pandemic, these numbers were expanding. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed both the weaknesses and strengths of our economy, as well as the social inequalities endemic in our society today. Among the weaknesses in our economy highlighted by the pandemic, Madam Speaker, is the extent of our reliance on the tourism sector to both drive and sustain economic growth and employment. We have collectively reaped the benefit of this golden goose effect from tourism in normal times, Madam Speaker. However, we are being reminded that in building back better, we must not simply build back. We cannot, Madam Speaker, simply recover what we had. We must use this opportunity to build ladders of opportunities and pathways to success for our people, one in which tourism will no doubt continue to play a large role, but is not the only engine of economic growth and employment. After all, Madam Speaker, it is widely known and generally accepted that a bird, a plane, or indeed an economy is not at its most resilient when it is flying on one wing only. What I'm advocating for, Madam Speaker, is a diversification of our economy. Tourism alone cannot pull the Jamaica locomotive. It needs help. The IMF, Madam Speaker, sounded the alarm earlier this year, showing that small island developing states, which are tourism dependent, are in for a rough road to recovery, as tourism dependent states are likely to be in a deeper and longer recession. The Tourism Minister and the Tourism Linkages Council should be applauded for increasing the retention of tourist spend locally from US 30 cents of every dollar in 2016 to 40.8 cents in 2019. This is well above the range for the Caribbean of between 10 and 30 cents. This growth in retention was due to greater linkages and connectivity between tourism and local attractions, entertainment, and food events. The connector, Madam Speaker, is the supply and logistics sector. However, I want to see a diversification of the connections or the linkages to tourism from other sectors. This is why I'm pleased to hear of the home porting of Norwegian Cruise Line and now Viking Cruises in Montego Bay, announced to begin in August of this year. I implore the Minister and the government to build ladders and to pave pathways for our people, build the business and logistics capabilities of the taxi operators from St. James, the tomato and melon farmers in St. Elizabeth, the niche chocolate maker in Manchester, the nutraceutical manufacturer in Kingston, etc. We want our businesses and entrepreneurs, or MSMEs island-wide, to be given a real opportunity, a ladder, not just to eat a food, but be shown a pathway to sustainable livelihoods. Madam Speaker, as a responsible opposition, our job is not only to critique or criticize the government and find fault or folly. Rather, Madam Speaker, a key role of the opposition in our parliamentary democracy is to provide alternative policy prescriptions that, if adopted by the government, would benefit our people. Madam Speaker, if we are to grab this historic opportunity as a nation, which the pandemic has presented us with, we need to address several structural issues that have plagued us and stymied our growth. Madam Speaker, what I'm offering up today is by no means a panacea, the cure-all to fix all the woes of our economy. However, I'm putting forward some recommendation based on evidence and driven by available data, any one of which by itself would build ladders of opportunity and pave the pathways to success for our people. In combination, they would represent real prosperity. The first, Madam Speaker, is education, human capital development. Madam Speaker, if there was any illusion, the pandemic has brought it squarely home that as a small island state, we cannot compete solely on the basis of low-cost labor. We must boost our productivity by developing our skills base. However, Madam Speaker, the latest Planning Institute of Jamaica, PIOJ, Jamaica Survey of Living Conditions 2018, does not paint a positive picture for the state of human development. And this was only a snapshot of the situation in 2018 and has not factored in the ravages of the pandemic. Madam Speaker, the PIOJ has reported that nearly 70% of the country's population falls within the working age cohort of 15 to 64 years in 2018. However, the survey also indicated that 25.9% of the population segment reported having, quote, some form of academic qualification, end quote, that would allow them to enter and advance in the workforce. However, Madam Speaker, 60% reported having no certification. A 40% skills development rate just will not do. But how do we build ladders of opportunity and pathways to success for our people, Madam Speaker? One way is through workforce colleges, similar to the one I've long been lobbying for in Seaview Gardens in my own constituency. These colleges would be a partnership between the government, industry, vocational training, and academic institutions, with training programs, internships, and apprenticeships designed and focused to meet the current and future needs of industry. Madam Speaker, I adopt here the position of the opposition as regards the educational and training allocation in the budget. Additionally, I have observed that the sums allocated for global services, which seeks to provide training for the BPO sector, while supportable, does not include training for the anticipated jobs in the supply chain and logistics sector, and should be corrected going forward. Madam Speaker, more needs to be done at the vocational and entry-level training by heart. I'm personally disappointed that my sustained effort at getting HEART to develop the Workforce College to train unattached youths and others over the past 7 years has not borne fruit. We must begin now to train our young men and women to enter the world of work in sustainable jobs and not those in sunset industries. Madam Speaker, the LAC region is and has been experiencing a significant deficit in infrastructure development, both new and upgrading of existing infrastructure. In the IDB study published in 2019, referenced earlier, it was estimated that the LAC has an infrastructure gap of around 2.5% of the region's collective GDP, or about $150 billion US dollars per annum. The economic consequences of this gap, Madam Speaker, is quite significant. In fact, the failure of regional countries to invest in infrastructure hurts our poor the most, because they spend more of their income on infrastructure services. The study found that households in the lower 40% of income distribution will lose 11 percentage points of real income over a 10-year period. But what infrastructure should Jamaica invest in? After all, not all infrastructure is created equal, and we are mindful of our fiscal constraints. The answer, Madam Speaker, is infrastructure that enhances national productive capacity. That is to say, infrastructure investments in utilities, that's electricity, gas, and water, transport, storage, and communication, in other words, key elements of logistics and construction. Madam Speaker, the IDB study goes on to note that investment in the utility sector enhanced productivity growth in agriculture, mining, and manufacturing, while investments in transport infrastructure are particularly relevant for productivity growth in agriculture and the service sectors. Notably, investment in construction are relevant for productivity growth in all economic sectors. However, Madam Speaker, filling this infrastructure gap has come at a time when global foreign direct investment fell by 42% to an estimated $859 billion from $1.5 trillion in 2019, according to the UNCTAD study, largely due to the effect of the pandemic. This reduction in FDI is all the more troubling. In 2020, investments declined by 35% in 2020 to $547 billion. In the case of this region, the LAC region, FDI declined by 37% to an estimated $101 billion. This included a 51% drop in investment, impacting productive capacity. But how do we build ladders of opportunity and pathways to success, Madam Speaker? We need to focus on improving our logistic infrastructure in road, rail, port, airport, digital, and special economic zones. But linking and networking them into a true economic ecosystem will derive both cost efficiency and cost-saving gains from economies of scale and scope. It is to be acknowledged, Madam Speaker, that the 2021 to 2011 budget expenditure touches on some aspects of the build-out of the logistics infrastructure, albeit in an incoherent and siloed manner, and not with the urgency the situation requires, nor with the levels of expenditure needed to fast-track the achievement of this vital initiative. To be sure, Madam Speaker, the multi-billion-dollar U.S. investment called for by the Logistic Hub Initiative was never intended to be funded by the national budget solely, or even primarily. Therefore, the government's main responsibility in this area is to be a catalyst and a facilitator of private sector investment, both local and foreign. The environment for attracting sufficient local and foreign direct investment is further discouraged by the high levels of crime and violence, and sadly, Madam Speaker, our less than stellar performance on the corruption index. Much of the success of this administration over the last period in BPO sector and infrastructure is the result of work done in the PNP administration. Frankly, Madam Speaker, a fresh impetus and innovative thinking, matched by efficient implementation, is needed now, especially in a post-pandemic environment. It is why the opposition is joining in the private sector call for the administration to slow the pace of development of a new parliament building and redirect the $7 billion allocated in this year's budget to greater efforts in the transformation of the digital infrastructure in areas such as agriculture and the manufacturing industries. The investment will reap a rich harvest in a short while and will improve Jamaica's own domestic supply chain of quality goods and services for the domestic and foreign consumers. Madam Speaker, opposition supports the thinking reflected in the investment policy, the draft investment policy, and have provided its comments and suggestions at improving the policy document. We are calling for a tabling of the policy in the Parliament and for a timely debate to ensue. We believe, Madam Speaker, that the country and the investment community at large will benefit from a fulsome discussion of the policy strategies contained in the document. Of significance, Madam Speaker, is a frontal embrace of the logistics-centered economy as a core strategy in driving investment in the local economy in the post-pandemic period. In addition to increased investment in the KPO, the LPO, and other high-order segments of the outsourcing industry, the policy acknowledges the opportunities in the gig economy represented by the last mile logistics delivery industry, which has mushroomed in the wake of the pandemic and the demand for home delivery services. Madam Speaker, ultimately, the success or failure of the new investment policy will depend on the promotion of the policy, both here and overseas. We see no greater allocation of funds, either JAMPRO or the Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade Ministry, in promoting this forward-looking policy strategy. But how do we build ladders of opportunity and pathways to success? Madam Speaker, this will be money well directed, as we know from the IDB that for every dollar invested in export promotion, up to US $45 in additional exports is generated. Madam Speaker, let me touch on two important segments. MSMEs are unquestionably a critical part of Jamaica's economy. Pre-pandemic, the sector accounted for over 80% of jobs, and according to Tax Administration Jamaica data, 97.6% of all classified taxpayers are defined as MSMEs. Even before the pandemic, our MSMEs needed help. But how do we create ladders of opportunity and pathways for success for our MSMEs? Madam Speaker, it is estimated that the government of Jamaica spends 30% of GDP on procuring goods and services annually. According to Statin, Jamaica's GDP in 2018 stood at about $1.8 trillion, making public procurement at 30% a very sizable $445 billion plus. Given these numbers, the size and importance of the MSME sector makes it incumbent on the government to use policy procurement as a tool of industrial policy and national development strategy. Madam Speaker, the government procurement can represent a meaningful source of demand for firms, as a government contract represents a means for the government to encourage MSMEs to invest more, grow jobs, and increase productivity. The government in 2019, Madam Speaker, undertook two reforms aimed at greater access to Jamaican businesses to this pot of money. The two measures, the first of which is a 20% set aside of government procurement for MSMEs, which was originally started under the PNPS policy, and the second, a domestic margin of preference, added much needed opportunities to Jamaican businesses. But neither of these were operationalized. MSMEs need funding support, Madam Speaker, an untapped source of funds that could be used to stimulate the economy is the unclaimed funds in the banks and other financial institutions. The government has gone silent on this after promises that legislation would be brought to the House shortly to sequester these funds after a long period of dormancy. This potential pool of funds, Madam Speaker, estimated to be in excess of $50 billion, it is now urgently needed to give a boost to the productive enterprises and to the MSME sector in particular, in the form of grants, zero or low interest loans, and government guarantees. The government cannot remain silent on this. Madam Speaker, the opposition recognizes that the appropriate environment for attracting investment is created not only by good policies, but critically from well-designed institutions. For this reason, I amplify the opposition leader's call for the establishment of a logistics council, which is aimed at coordinated policy actions across the several sub-industries, sectors, and activities that supports the supply chain and logistics industry. Madam Speaker, the pandemic has made perceptible what has been imperceptible but real. It has also demonstrated the fragility of the global supply chain, but also shown the promise of this most enabling of all industries. But, Madam Speaker, the absence of reliable data concerning the sector in Jamaica, which has served to obscure its tremendous potential, was highlighted in the Jamaica Logistics Hub Initiative, Market Analysis and Market Plan. But how do we build ladders of opportunity and pathways to success in such an environment, Madam Speaker? The proposed Logistic Council is aimed at breaking down the silos inherent in the Jamaican bureaucracy, which has historically prevented a holistic approach to policy planning, strategy, and priorities that assist government in deepening its understanding of the needs of the sector and the priority to be assigned to the different actions recommended from time to time. The Logistic Council will be led by the private sector, but with support from academia, trade unions, and key public sector agencies operating in the sector, such as Customs, the Port Authority, Trade Board, Bureau of Standards, SEC Authority, and others. So, Madam Speaker, for the logistics-centered economy to be effective as a strategy to transform the Jamaican economy, we need policy prescriptions aimed at benefiting enterprises as well as the mass of people. We must unleash the potential of our people by providing the opportunity for them to achieve their hopes and dreams, to live simple yet fulfilling lives. Madam Speaker, this is what I mean by building ladders of opportunity and paving pathways to success. This is the only way we are going to succeed in building back better, not just building back, and to create a more prosperous, equitable, and resilient future for our people in the aftermath of the pandemic. The logistics industry globally is underpinned by 7 rights, and I will close by imploring the government to adhere closely to these 7 rights in building ladders of opportunity and removing barriers to enable the success of businesses and our people in a logistics-centered economy. Madam Speaker, Jamaica needs to attract investment in order to become more integrated in the global supply and value chains with the right product, medical devices, pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, agriculture, automotive, or any of the other feasible industries outlined in the Jamaica Logistic Hub Initiative, Market Analysis and Master Plan. The right customer, serving the Americas with its 800 million plus person market and beyond, and addressing the infrastructure need of the Postal Service to enable it to assist businesses, especially MSME sector, to participate in export trade, as well as a growing e-commerce market as part of global and domestic last-mile logistics delivery services. The right quantity. We have seen what attracting just 0.1% of few select industries can do for our exports and economy. The right condition. Operating at world-class standards in providing state-of-the-art warehouses and distribution facilities, appropriate to ensuring that sensitive goods and materials are stored and delivered as contracted for. The right place. Jamaica's geostrategic location, together with modern infrastructure and highway, communication and port networks, assure connectivity to global and local markets at competitive rates. Access to an English-speaking and trainable workforce provides advantages to foreign investments engaged in cross-border trade. And the right costs, by addressing our structural constraints, such as customs reforms, can significantly lower the landed cost of freight to and from Jamaica and improve the ease and speed of doing business. And lastly, Madam Speaker, the right time. Madam Speaker, the time is now. May God bless Jamaica, land we love.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank the Minister of Labor and Social Security for his presentation and for the goodies that he has presented to us today. I really want to thank him. He's not in the chamber at the moment, but I want to thank him. And I also want to thank the Leader of Opposition Business for his presentation and to indicate to him that we have been extremely generous in affording you the time you required to complete your presentation. And we thank you for your presentation. Madam Speaker, Now, I now ask that the debate be suspended.
Question before the House is that the sectoral debate be suspended. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there being no further business for today, I ask that the House be adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, April 28th at 2 p.m. Our sectoral debate will continue with contributions from the Honorable Favour Williams, Minister of Education, Youth and Information, and from Mrs. Marlene Malahoo Fort, our Attorney General. Madam Speaker, thank you.
The question before the House is that the House be adjourned until the continuation of the sectoral debate tomorrow, Wednesday, the 28th of April. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. This House is now adjourned.
We work to make communities safer by essentially looking at the structures in the community that contribute greatest to social capital building. Try to